Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Elpida Pavlidou, and I am a senior lecturer in psychology and education at the University of York. I am delighted to be chairing today's York Festival of Ideas webinar delivered by Dr. Kalliopi Megari. I am very pleased after the housekeeping stuff to welcome Dr. Kalliopi Megari, who will share insights from her very fascinating research. Dr. Kalliopi Megari is the academic director of the postgraduate program in clinical psychology at the University of York Europe campus based in Greece, and a postdoctoral researcher at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, where she completed her undergraduate degrees in nursing and psychology, as well as a master's and a PhD in neuropsychology. She's also the adjunct lecturer at the University of Western Macedonia in Florida, in Greece. And currently, she's a global membership committee member of the International Neuropsychological Society, INS for short. She's also the leader of the rehabilitation of COVID-19 patients working group of the NeuroCovid Task Force, which is actually a global collaborative under the INS that is dedicated to studying the neurological and cognitive sequelae of COVID-19. She has also served as the ambassador of the National Academy of Neuropsychology in the USA Leadership and Ambassador Development Program. Her work has earned many prestigious international awards. I'd like to thank Kalliopi for taking the time to join us today and share her amazing expertise. We're very grateful to have you with us today, Kalliopi. And without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Elpida. Thank you very much for your presentation for me. I couldn't say all the details I did better than you. Thank you so much, Your Festival of Ideas. Another year I'm with you. This year I will speak about the environments for neurodivergent minds, safe spaces, and neuropsychology of emotion. And I will share a few things about my research. First, I will start my presentation by asking a question to you. If you see at this picture, what are your thoughts or your emotions? This picture says that psychological safety looks different for everyone because everyone has their own wounds and they need their own ways of treating, of healing. So the background and the context is very important, especially for all people, but especially for people with neurodevelopmental conditions. Sensory overload impacts daily functioning for all people. Emotional reactivity is linked and connected to the environment, and traditional settings may increase the stress levels because of the way we all function. We try to do many things together, we try to multitask, and the environments are built according to this. Safe spaces may improve regulation, and especially regulation of emotions. Another picture, if I ask you to describe this picture for me, what would you say? Would you say that there is a person, he has many thoughts, maybe the person is confused about, maybe they are thinking of the future, maybe the person is thinking of the problems that they have, and there is a book down in his feet. So all these thoughts are messed up and the person is confused according to this picture. This may be worse if the environment is not so good. And what do we mean when we say not so good? Understanding neurodiversity. What neurodiversity is? Neurodiversity describes the idea that people experience and interact with the world around them in many different ways. There is no one right way of thinking, learning, or behaving. We have different people doing different things, having different skills and different, let's say, strengths. So differences are not viewed as deficits. So the key point of neurodiversity approach is that we have differences, and these differences are not deficits. We don't speak about impairments when we speak through the neurodiversity lens. And neurodiversity also refers to the diversity of some people. Maybe all people are kind of different, but it's often used in the context of autism spectrum disorder, in the context of people with neurodevelopmental disabilities. Another condition that is connected with neurodiversity is neurological or developmental conditions such as ADHD or learning disabilities. Many conditions are connected to neurodiversity approach. Here you can see a picture. It's like a cycle, and in the center we have the brain. So we speak about neurodivergence regarding many different conditions, not only ASD and ADHD, but regarding neurological condition, regarding emotional, maybe mood disorders like anxiety, because you know that emotional conditions and emotions can alter the brain as well, the brain connectivity. So it's very important to take this into account. Again, neurodiversity reflects natural brain variation. ADHD and ASD show unique sensory profiles. And I would say, I would ask you, what do I mean by that, sensory profiles? But later on, I will explain. Environmental sensitivity is common because these people tend to be overwhelmed by the stimuli of the environment. And when we say stimuli of the environment, you mean the noise, excessive noise, or the lighting, or the way that a room is structured, the furniture is located. All this have, as a result, these people tend to be overwhelmed by this sensory stimuli because we have environmental sensitivity. And of course, if the spaces are supportive, this can improve the outcomes for these people's lives. Neuropsychology of emotion. What do we speak about emotion here? Because we said that in some conditions, people tend to be overwhelmed by the environment, by the environmental stimuli, and emotion regulations involves executive system. So executive system and executive functions are responsible for the regulation of the emotion. Stress affects cognition and attention as well. Stress, the emotions can affect our our cognitive system functions, and attention is a cognitive function that is very important, is a part of cognitive functions. So we have brain environment interactions, and this is something very important in people who are considered to be neurodivergent. Context shapes emotional responses. So the context plays a very important role in order to shape emotional responses, particularly in people with ADHD and ASD, who tend to be very hypersensitive. Safe space concept, I will say a few things about that. Designing to reduce overstimulation is considered to be a safe space for neurodivergent people. Supports predictability and comfort for them because usually people with ASD don't want to change the environment, don't want to change their habits. And if there is a change in their programs, in their habits, in the way that the place around them is the position of the material around them, tend to be very anxious. They tend to be very anxious. They tend to be overwhelmed. So if we have a safe space, this means predictability for them. And predictability is a very important factor for them. And this means comfort. because they have issues with change. They have issues, or if you change something and you change something rapidly, they tend to be overwhelmed, and all the changes that you can do must be done gradually. Safe space, again, enhances perceived control, because these people have an insight of having the control, perceiving the control, because they cannot control many things of their lives, but the safe space can enhance the perceived control that they have over their lives. And of course, safe space encourages self-regulation and emotion regulation, the way that they can regulate themselves, the way that they can regulate their emotions, because the environment around them is fixed and they can regulate their emotions. Now I will share a few things about my ongoing research. We started with the research problem that we have limited evidence on environmental effects on people with neurodevelopmental conditions. The underlying mechanisms remain poorly understood, and neuropsychological investigation is necessary. I mean, neuropsychology is helpful in every condition, but here it's important to have a neuropsychological assessment to see the neuropsychological functions as well. And it's good to inform evidence-based design, because our results can be used in order for the design to be better and more helpful for people with neurodiversity. The study objectives: we wanted to assess emotional regulation and emotions. Of course, executive functioning. Executive functions are very important neurocognitive functions, mainly responsible for everything, for every part of our lives. Evaluate physiological stress. We weren't alone in this research. Physicians cooperated. We cooperated with physicians, so we were a team from neuropsychologists and physicians. And we wanted to explore participants' experiences. We used mixed methods design. We had two environmental conditions. We have standardized regulations, tasks, and we have behavioral and physiological data. We have 102 participants aged from 10 to 17. The diagnosis was ADHD or ASD, and the recruitment was clinical recruitment. The recruitment was done by a physician. The experimental conditions: we have the traditional clinical setting and the sensory-informed safe space. Identical task requirement: all the tasks were identical in the neuropsychological assessment, and we used comparative analysis. Safe space features reduce sensory distractions. Sensory distractions are very important for people with neurodiversity. It's good to remove the distractions if it's possible, or at least to remove many distractions if it's possible. Predictable layout, personal autonomy options, and their autonomy is increased if they live in safe environments and in safe spaces. And of course, the atmosphere is calm and supportive, and the tone of the voice, the pitch of our voice must be accordingly, because these people tend to be overwhelmed, as I said earlier. And the measures that we use regarding cognition, attention assessment, executive function testing, task persistence measures, performance comparison. This is the neuropsychological, neurocognitive test battery that we have used. As you can see, we have assessed all the important neurocognitive functions, and not only neurocognitive functions, but emotions as well, and positive and negative mood, anxiety, and quality of life. Because quality of life is a very important outcome. Quality of life is a very important outcome of our lives. And all the research must have an outcome, the quality of life, because as professionals, as psychologists, we need to, this is our job, to improve qualities of life. So it's good to have this as an outcome in order to design programs for increasing quality of life as well. Regarding physiological measurements, physicians helped us with this. The heart rate variability, the measurement of the heart rate, skin conductance levels, emotional arousal indicators with the heart palpitations as well, and objective stress measurement. Physicians took care of this, and they analyzed the sweat, the way the sweat, the systems of the sweating. So our results regarding emotion regulation, our results were that safe spaces can improve emotional control because the participants who were in the safe spaces showed that they had improved emotional control, more positive emotions and less negative emotion. Reduce dysregulation, the feeling of dysregulation that they had, because these people tend to be overwhelmed, and as a result, they may be angry, they may be screaming, or they may have anger outbursts and tantrums because of this overwhelming. And this is a way of expressing their emotions. These people express their emotions. Sometimes they are not angry towards a particular person or a particular condition. They just expressing their emotion. This is a way of them expressing their emotions. And this means dysregulation. So safe spaces mean that this dysregulation is reduced. They had better behavioral responses. Again, we said that if these persons tend to be overwhelmed, the behavior will be accordingly. They may have anger outbursts, they may break things and things like that because of the overwhelming, because of all the things that they experience at a particular time. And with safe space and with providing us safe spaces, they have better behavioral responses as well. And of course, this can enhance the self-management that they have. They had better self-management. They can better manage themselves and the emotions that they feel. Of course, not only, we wouldn't say in the discussion we will analyze, it's not only about safe space. Many things play an important role in self-management. But safe spaces are important in the way they manage their feelings. The cognitive outcomes of this research, they had stronger executive performance because after some time we repeated the testing and we found out that they had stronger executive performance. Their attention was improved as well because safe space, especially for people with autism, meaning the distractions to go away, a safe space meaning a space free of the distractions, especially noisy distractions. So the attention was better because the safe space didn't have distractions, and they had greater persistence in the way they were coping and the way they're managing all the things that they wanted to manage, because we will see it's a common for people who are overwhelmed. It's very common to see a pattern. If they're overwhelmed, they have anger outbursts, they experience negative emotions, and it's common to see that they quit easily. And in the programs, in the rehab programs, in the intervention programs, if they are overwhelmed, they tend to quit. This is the way. And with this program, with this safe space that we wanted to see, we saw that they had greater persistence. They didn't quit easily. So difficulties didn't play a so important role in order for them to quit. And of course, we found out that they showed reduced cognitive interference. Cognitive interference, when you are distracted, it's easy to have interference, and this interference will tend for you to be more distracted as well, and all cognitive functions to be lower, decreased, let's say. So they showed reduced cognitive interference. This means that they could focus in some things more easily, and they could do it because the space was free of distractions. Regarding physiological outcomes, they showed lower stress responses. They showed improved HRV patterns, reduced skin conductance, and greater physiological stability. Physicians informed us that their heart rate was normal, in the normal levels. They didn't have increased palpitations, and the skin, they didn't sweat so much, and they showed physiological stability. They were stable. Some qualitative findings, it's very important because we saw the value of predictability. They showed increased sense of control. This was good for us as well because we wanted this sense of control. We want them. This is an outcome that are targets for the intervention programs, the sense of control, the dependency that we want for people with neurodiversity to have in their lives. And of course, the overstimulation was reduced because, again, the safe space was free of distractions, and they didn't overstimulate. And the engagement was enhanced. We may say that they could engage more because they weren't distracted. So they could be focused on specific things that we want them to do. They weren't distractive, and they could focus more better ways. Now, let's discuss a few things. Environment is a very important aspect of our lives, of course, whether it's physical or personal or psychological environment, because all these play an important role. And we can say that environment is neuropsychologically active. I mean, neuropsychology can play an important role when it comes to environment. It's not only about emotions, it's about neurocognitive functions as well that play an important role. Space influences emotional circuits and emotion in general. Emotion and cognition interact. Of course, you know that we can't have the one without the other. We can't have the cognition without the emotion. That's why it's very important to assess both cognition and emotions as well, because emotions can interfere with cognition. For example, if you are stressed, if you have increased levels of anxiety, you will see, and you need to do an exam, you need to pass an exam, you will see that you may have studied hard, but because the anxiety interferes the cognitive system, your memory levels could be decreased. And you can say, I don't remember anything. I feel stressed, and I can't remember anything. After some time, when you have the time to relax and take breathing, deep breaths, then you will be able again to be more calm, and your memory would be better. So emotion and cognition interact with each other. So design and the way environments are designed can support well-being, especially for people with neurodiversity. And because design can support well-being of all people, because emotions are involved. So designing environments is a very important factor. Our implications for the future, our results can benefit the way educational environments are designed and built, because some schools, especially for people with ASD, they follow the TEACH program. The TEACH program is help the students to be away from distractions and to be alone, and usually the desk faces the walls. Creating educational environments with safe space is something very important. Of course, in clinical practice, even some facilities for people with neurodiversity can be designed accordingly in clinical practice in order to be facilitated. Inclusive architecture, the architecture must be inclusive for people with neurodiversity. And of course, this has to do with policy development, and people who make decisions regarding policy development must take all this into account, and of course to cooperate with neuropsychologists. This would be the ideal scenario for us in order to give our insights for policy development. Some conclusions regarding future research. We say that safe spaces can improve the outcomes of people with neurodiversity. The design affects neuropsychology, and neuropsychology can affect design as well. It's a two-way. Support individualized intervention can happen through the safe space design. And of course, we need to study more or to have more long-term, maybe we need to have follow-ups and follow-ups assessment in order to see the long-term developmental effects on people with neurodiversity. Usually it's good to have follow-ups, and if it's possible to use longitudinal design in order to see these people after some years, if they are in safe spaces and the effects of these safe spaces in their lives. Of course, we don't forget that psychologists and neuropsychologists play a very important role when it comes to neurodiversity and when it comes to everything that has to do with the brain, with behavior, with emotions. We play a very important role in the assessment, but not only in the assessment, in the treatment plans, in the rehabilitation programs, when we need to design rehabilitation programs for people with neurodiversity. Because assessment again plays an important role, because we assess, and after some time we assess the treatment plan that we have. So neuropsychologists play an important role, and psychologists in general can play an important role regarding emotions, because many people are involved, and me as a professional, I always want to cooperate with many different specialties, and I usually say to my students, united we stand, divided we fall. So it's good to cooperate with many other people, but we don't forget the crucial contribution of neuropsychologists. And now that my presentation is coming to its end, I would like to say and to rephrase a little bit the quote of Alan Bagley. Alan Bagley is a very important theorist regarding the cognitive system. When I was a postgraduate student, we learned everything, every theory about the system, memory system, working memory regarding Bagley. And one of my professors at university is cooperating with Bagley. So I would like to close my presentation with a quote of Alan Bagley, slightly rephrasing it. And we can say that perhaps the best way to appreciate the importance of cognitive system is to consider what it would be like to live without it. As cognitive system is not a single organ like the heart or liver, but an alliance of systems that work together, allowing us to learn from the past and predict the future. So without the cognitive system, we couldn't survive. So it's very important to pay attention on the cognitive system, neuropsychologists and psychologists in general.
Well, that was fascinating, Kalliopi. Thank you so much for this presentation. And I find it fascinating because your work explores this, intersection between environmental design, neuroscience, psychology, neurodiversity, and this is a gateway, a window to how we can create safe spaces that are well thought, very thoughtfully designed, supportive, and they tick that box of inclusive, environments. I have some questions, but we have very insightful questions from your audience today. Thank you so much for those questions. We'll start with those, and then I can chip in. Before I read some of the questions, I love the fact that you concluded your presentation with Alan Badley. This is a person I always quote in my teaching. He's an emeritus professor of York, and before I started actually driving, I was using the bus service of the university, and this was such a dedicated person that would use the bus service. So I felt so important sitting behind Alan Badley in a bus route to campus. He's a wonderful person and
Yes,
very
Professor.
influential.
One of our professors was cooperating with Alan Barley when I was a master student, and she always mentioned
Mm.
Alan Barley, always, always in every class.
He's an
We had
icon.
yes.
So let's go to our lovely audience that they have been already posing numerous questions, very exciting questions and very insightful ones. So we'll start with the first one. As someone with ADHD and ASD, I find that environments that are also understimulating are an issue for me and other MDs I know. So where would the happy balance of environmental stimulation be?
Yes, this is a very interesting question. I mean, it depends on the space. It depends on the environment, I would say. I would say that maybe we need to be in between, not overstimuli, not understimuli again. Again, we need to have some stimuli in order for the brain circuits and all this. And this stimuli must be pleasant as well. So I think in between, but it has to do with the setting as well. For example, it's not the same the setting of a school. It's not the same the university. It's not the same in a clinic because some people are hospitalized and it's good. So it depends on the space. It depends on the environment. This is something very important for us to cooperate with people who design architectures and things like that to give us their opinion as well. This is
Uh,
interesting.
it's interesting you say that, Kalliopi, because the same attendee actually posed a question that is, along the lines of what you're just describing. They ask, will you be exploring the environmental safe space designs for neurodivergent adults in the workplace? And I think workplace alone is a very interesting paradigm where we can, revisit all these ideas. Um, so another question, given that it's acknowledged that neurodivergence is a difference, not a deficit, what are your thoughts on aspects of neurodivergence still being referred to as disorders? There's so much we
Oh,
can say on that.
long, very long conversation. The terminology. Okay, as I said before, neurodiversity is an approach. So, as an approach, we have many different approaches. And I would say that I have a module that I teach at University of York Europe campus that is called neurodevelopmental disorders. So, disorder is a common term that is used among professionals, physicians, psychiatrists, neurologists, but neurodiversity is an approach. This means that as an approach, different approaches may focus on different things. So, physicians, for example, they cannot consider, at least some of them, they cannot consider neurodiversity because they see the impairment in front of them and they say, we have a disorder, we have the genes that are impaired, we have the brains that are impaired. I would say it has to do with the approach and it has to do with the specialty. that works with people with disability. Because still in our work, I'm afraid, we use the term disorders.
Can I just sort of chip in and say that um, the neurodivergence language sounds very contradictory to the medical language, and I do appreciate that, and we understand that. I think where those terms are used, it depends on context, as Kalliopi sort of mentioned. From a research perspective, we use that medical terminology because we need to make a decision of if who is that we're studying it. So we use that as a way to, as an inclusion criterion to understand group membership. And sometimes individuals that that fall within a spectrum, when we ask for their lived experience, then we understand that some of them actually need that diagnostic label. They feel that they belong, or it could have the opposite effect. It could induce things of stigma, of self-conscious, of what is called a lack of disclosure of their circumstances. It might affect their friendships. It's a long list of things. So I would say the gray zone, if Kalliopi agrees with me, is that depending where your standpoint is and what is the aim of what you're trying to do, you can switch between these two terms, provided that you do that in an informed and cautious way. And I can speak about how I approach those terms from the viewpoint of dyslexia. So if you want to study, individuals with dyslexia, how do you include them in the group, including self-assessment, right? That's the importance of neurodivergent approach. So we don't exclude individuals that identify as belonging in a
Yes.
particular group.
If
If
I
that,
may, if I may, to make an
yeah.
additional comment, I would say
Mhm.
because I cooperate with physicians a lot, and we need to have a common language, I would say
Mhm.
that it doesn't matter how we call these people. The thing that it matters most is the love, the inclusion that we bring. So no matter if it's called, okay, physicians call them disorders. I call sometimes we call them disorders as well, and even the clients want to. Again, I totally agree with Elpida. The clients want this terminology, but the most important thing for me, because I have worked with people with neurodiversity for 9 years, the most important thing is inclusion, is to bring love. As a professional, the most important thing is to give love to them.
Absolutely. I think that's a common thread, where this work is stemming from and what it's hoping to achieve. We have which brings us to some questions about the research design itself, and then we can move on to other questions. So, how many of the participants showed this particular result? And actually, I think we've probably answered this. You probably answered this question already, but it was my paired methodological question. What was your inclusion criteria for the individuals you included in your study? So let's start with for how many of those participants those
Usually,
results?
50 people showed better results, 50 people. And the recruitment criteria was the diagnosis. The diagnosis was given by the physicians. The physicians gave the diagnosis and made the recruitment. I did the along with my team, we did the neuropsychological testing.
I see. So it wasn't anyone who self-referred or
No,
self-identified
no,
as
no.
it was
Everything
based on
was,
diagnostic criteria.
yes, yes. I have mentioned it. Yes. In my presentation, I have mentioned it.
Sorry, I missed that
No,
part.
no, it's okay to
Um,
repeat things. It's okay.
uh, so we have another very plenty of interesting questions and insightful. We're very pleased. Can you give some examples of the setting used in the study and the way you adjusted it to make it more of a safe space?
Oh, I didn't have some photographs to show you because the physicians didn't send me the photographs yet, but I will explain to you. Um, in my presentation, I mentioned the teach system. For those of you who have worked with people with ASD in schools, you must have known this system. The teach system means that the student must sit in a way facing the wall and having not having distractions and not being in contact with other students. So, and the desk is placing in a way facing the wall and not being contact, not, they don't see other students. So we had an environment with chairs, we have 3 or 4 chairs, and it's kind of separated from one room to the other, one chair to another. It was a very large room, and the chair that the participants were sitting was separating the one from the other with beautiful colors. We didn't have distractions for noisy distractions. And after some time, we added a very soft music, calm music. We added this as well.
Thank you, Kalliopi. Another great question. Thank you for your fascinating talk. What are your thoughts on safe spaces regarding sensory stimulation, in particular, in digital environments? Thinking about the overstimulation we may experience from interacting with screens, especially smartphones, so often.
Oh, nice question. To be honest, yesterday when I was a chair at Chrysopigis Vardikou the presentation, we had this kind of comment. We made some comments about that. I would go with digital detox because I do it myself. I try to do it myself. So I made a program with my psychologist. I made a schedule which hours I will be involved with digital media or my emails and things like that. So it's good to have a program. It's good to set boundaries for yourself and your family members. So I would go with detox because we need that. I many times I caught myself being with my cell phone and in the social. I want to see this, I want to see that, and I spent a lot of time in doing that. And then I realized this, and we need to be detoxed from digital issues, and we need to set a program about that. I would totally go setting a program, defining which hours you will be involved, and later on you need to read the book, go to the nature, go to for a walk. I would go with this.
Can I ask, based on this question, this is my thought process, the kind of work you are doing could actually inform the design of digital spaces from the get-go, not as an afterthought, but actually from the design process, and viewing it from the perspective of digital literacy that is more relevant to the things that I'm doing. I can just contribute like just one thought that I understand where this question is stemming from, because even if I'm not a neurodivergent, technically speaking, a neurodivergent individual, I still find digital spaces overstimulating, and it's not, the same as a, printed book. The way you read is different. You move your attention throughout, the space. You have many more distractions in that space, and the nature of reading and engagement with digital spaces changes. So as food for thought, you should consider how all of these things that you are slowly, accumulating all this evidence of this kind of safe spaces, how they could actually apply and used in digital spaces that are commonplace now. So we have another question. Were the ADHD participants medicated or unmedicated during the study? Is a methodological question, or was it a mix? Very good questions. If it was a mix, did the results look different for the medicated versus unmedicated participants? That's a very, very interesting question as well.
All the participants were medicated. So because as I said earlier, the recruitment was from the clinics, from physicians. So every person was medicated. But it's a good idea for future research to do that, to compare.
Excellent. We have an amazing audience, amazing attendees, very,
I'm
very
impressed.
insightful comments. And I'm collecting ideas as I read the questions and as I hear you respond to those questions. Wonderful. I do have one question myself because the age group of the participants you included were children and young adults, like typically speaking, 10 to 17-year-olds, right? Do you have like an opinion, or do you think just what you think about early sensory profiling, in the sense that it might help us detect this kind of, emotionally vulnerable young children within the neurodivergent, broad umbrella.
Mm.
Because you talked about I thought about this because you talked about some of the implications of your work, and those implications relate to, assessments, relate to more, dimensional approaches or more personalized approaches to intervention planning, and so forth. So, is there anything that we can pick your brain when it comes to, detecting these kinds of vulnerable individuals really early on in their early formative years?
I would go with the family. In order to respond to your question, I would say that it depends on the family, it depends on the support that they have from the family. Because in my work, I was doing psychotherapeutic group sessions for the parents as well. And I have seen many different patterns of the family, how the family copes with neurodiversity, if they believe in disorders or this or things, if they want to cope with that, if they deny, if they ignore. So we have different patterns. So I would say that it depends on the family. If the family copes in a manner that early on, from the early signs and the neurodevelopmental milestones, if they are not met in order to start searching the issue earlier, this is usually a good predictor. And if the children have the support from their family. So first I would go with the family. I would be more clinical psychology for this because I'm a clinical psychologist as well. I would
Sure.
more clinical psychologist, and I would go, the family play a very important role, how they cope, how they deal with the situation. And later on, there are many different other approaches. For example, if they attend school for people with educational needs, different educational needs, or typical school. What we suggest, for example, some parents want their children to be in a typical school, regardless of the suggestion of some experts, for example. So I would go with the family. I would focus on the family more and the parental styles and all this.
Thank you. That's a very important, interesting perspective. When often individuals are being dealt with in isolation, we tend to forget that family is another type of environment, is another type of space that offers
Exactly.
both risk and protective factors. Thank you
Exactly.
so much. We have another comment from a very passionate attendee. I think the name attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is an ironic name for the condition. I think I agree. I have an issue with focusing on tasks I do not care for, but I cannot stop focusing on the things I'm passionate about. And thank you for this comment because can I just say that this is why psychology as a discipline, as a whole, has started, a shift when looking at lived experiences. It wasn't just disability studies that were doing that in the past. Now we care about people that feel that they belong to a group and they experience certain experiences, that they share those experiences, and they should be involved directly in how we understand conditions, in inverted commas, disorders or differences or diversity. By being, included in co-produced work and participatory efforts. So thank you for that comment. Kalliopi, any comments about the comment?
I
About
would
this
say
ADHD not being the right name for this experience.
I would go with clinical psychology, and I would say that because DSM says that it's considered to be a disorder if it causes distress, disability, and dysfunctionality to someone. So if it's not causes all this, and you are passionate about something, it's just words. So words cannot harm us.
I'll put a semicolon to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes words hurt. And
Yes,
we
but we need to be very worked because I do my educational training in mindfulness. That's why I have this insight.
of
Words,
course.
we need to be ready so words not to hurt us. Oh,
You talked
I know.
about, yeah, emotion regulation and executive functions. These are very important skills across development and for all individuals. So it's very important that we take this into consideration. We have another question. Did you change the lighting designs in the environment, and did the changes benefit the participants? If you did change the lighting, what was the light source that showed a greater beneficial effect? What an interesting question. I did lighting before, but I can totally see how everything, it's senses, different senses.
When if you mean that if we change the lights from from the first mode, we used mild lighting, so we didn't change anything else. If you mean something like that, we didn't change throughout the study. We didn't change the lighting throughout the study. From the beginning, we started with mild lighting, and then we continue with this. If you mean something like that.
I think there is a paper on that focused on architecture that you mentioned and this kind of prototype design for this kind of safe and ND-friendly spaces. I don't remember if lighting was part of that, but I'm happy to at some point like post this so whoever is interested in having a look. At the light source element. They
And
might actually include one.
I can add, as I said earlier, people with ASD have issues if you switch something in the environment. So from the beginning, we start from a point and we complete it with this point. We didn't change anything from the beginning because people with ASD have issues changing. So if we change the lighting, we could have interesting results. So I'm taking ideas for future research. Thank
Yeah,
you so
the
much.
sorry to talk over you, Kalliopi, but the person, the attendee that asked that question, they specified I meant the source of lighting, that is lamps, white or warm, overhead lighting, etc. Just for future, inspiration for future reference. Um, so another sort of comment and question, how do we get governments and private businesses to incorporate these ideas? Light sources are really important. For example, harsh, bright lighting in supermarkets. I couldn't agree more. Also, very loud supermarket self-checkout machines. As a sort of anecdotal comment, my 8-year-old has learned by heart what these machines are giving you feedback on. It's hilarious. You can just reiterate it at any time. Constant announcements on trains. Sensory overstimulation is everywhere.
Yes, I think our associations, psychological associations, scientific associations can play an important role because I am a member of many committees in the US, and APA is a very powerful organization. So we wish in all countries to have such powerful organizations because APA can make the difference. They have influence in the governments, but not all countries can achieve this. So maybe they should consider psychologists' work and neuropsychologists' work, but I'm afraid this is not the case in many countries. We hope in the future our associations to be strong enough in order to influence the government and the policies, the people who make the policy decisions, to include us as well in our research.
There was a very recent white paper that came out here in the UK, Kalliopi. It's a white paper that focuses on how they vi envision children that who thrive. And this could be a nice sort of reference point for the attendee if they want to have a look at what these policy documents look like. And actually, as a department, by the way, now as an education department, we're preparing a response to that white paper. Is what Kalliopi mentioned about psychologists being actually asked explicitly to contribute any sort of existing knowledge about any aspect of inclusive environments, home learning environments, educational environments, other spaces like playgrounds, like anything that,
Yes,
any sort of
and
environments that
that,
any individual would more likely interact with. Yes, it's the every child achieving and thriving from the Department for Education in the UK. That's the white paper I tried to
as
reference.
a member of many committees in the US, we get some emails from APA because I'm not just a member, I'm a member of committees. I'm elected to be there. And they send us some emails to give some insights about some thoughts. What should APA send to the government in order to influence the policymakers, the people who make decisions. So this is something very important for psychologists.
Absolutely. And for our guests today, actually we have a what is called the York Policy Engine. So it's a fabulous organization that helps us researchers and other professionals to draft policy-friendly documents that and have pipelines of actions and different mechanisms through which we can actually influence those policies that have been um, uh, you were alluring to. So, and that applies to private businesses as well. Usually, if there are governmental bodies that endorse and support specific changes, it would usually, you'll see some form of impact for in businesses as well. So it goes hand in hand, in my humble opinion. Um, uh, and one final question, a very, very engaging and lively conversation. I'm unsure if you're both neurodivergent. I am not, sadly. But my goal is to eventually work in neuroscience research with a special focus on neurodevelopmental disorders. What struggles do, uh, do you face being neurodivergent in the research space? Well, probably, I'm definitely not the right person to ask this question. But I can just very briefly share very positive examples of neurodivergent glory. And I have colleagues that are diagnosed with dyslexia, or they identify as dyslexics, and they thrive in research and scholarship. And I think it really depends on all the things that Kalliopi highlighted today, but also, a broader environment. So individual characteristics and how these have been um, nurtured and sustained through family relations and then someone's educational experiences and all the things that shape you up as an older adult. So things like emotion regulation that Kalliopi mentioned, all these other cognitive aspects, but also socio-emotional aspects of who you are, they all contribute to being
And
successful.
I would say, I would respond to that by saying that I had a professor who said that, very famous in Greece, Professor Pavlidis, was specialized in dyslexia, and he used to say that dyslexia is a talent, is a charisma, not a deficit. So he tried to enhance the self-awareness, and he tried to increase the self-awareness and the self-confidence of people with neurodiversity. So don't focus. We don't need to focus on the impairment so much. We need to focus on the positive as well. I would say, because I use the positive psychology approach, it's good to focus on the positive as well, because we tend to focus on the impairment, the deficit, the disorder. It's good to focus on the positive aspects of every condition, I would say, not only neurodiversity.
Is a very conscious effort to change the narrative. And that sort of public research narrative and community narrative, we need to address how this narrative changes and move away from stigma, from stereotype threat, what you're supposed to be doing, how you're supposed to be doing, how successful we're expecting you to be. These are all, very important factors, and that's what Kalliopi's work and my work are trying to figure out. What are those risk and protective factors that when they come together, they actually enhance the likelihood that you will meet your utmost, your best opportunities and your best outcomes. Um, Lovely.
Okay, nice.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Kalliopi for your time and for being part of the York Festival of Ideas, which is a very important and I would like to say a very empowering space and a very safe space for everyone. Can I just say thank you to all of you as well for contributing in such a lovely and positive and intriguing and stimulating way in today's webinar. We really appreciate you all. And thank you so much, Kalliopi, for bringing all your expertise and your time here today.